Good morning, everybody. My name is Margaret Henn. I'm the Director of Program Management here at Maryland Volunteer Lawyers Service, and I am here today to talk about Real ID. So what is Real ID and why is it something that you should be thinking about? Real ID is based on a federal law that passed a couple years ago that requires the state of Maryland, when they're issuing either a driver's license or a state ID, to have someone come in person and provide some documentation proving their identity and their residence in Maryland. So this is going to typically require someone providing two different proofs of who they are, like a birth certificate, a passport, social security card, and then two different proofs of where they live, like a rent, a lease, or a utility bill. And this law goes into effect fully on October 1, 2021. So after that time, if you don't have one of these Real IDs that you've gotten by providing those documents to the MVA, you won't be able to use your ID in an airport or in certain federal facilities. And whenever your ID expires, whether it's before October 1st, 2021 or after, you will go through a process with the state of Maryland to get a Real ID. And if you have not gone through the process by the time your license expires, you do risk having your license revoked if you were to get stopped in traffic or something like that. So Real ID, why am I talking about it? Why might it trip some people up? Some of these documentations that you need to bring into the MVA to get a Real ID can be tricky for people. For one thing, for some older adults, they actually don't have a birth certificate. They might have a certificate of live birth, and this is actually not sufficient documentation for Real ID. But what they will allow for older adults are military discharge papers or Social Security benefits information. So that's something to be aware of. The other thing that can really trip people up is if their name or other information doesn't match exactly on all of these documents. And that can be either because the person has gone by different names throughout their life, the person's been married or divorced or changed their name, the person has gone through a gender transition. There can be a number of different reasons that someone's name may not match on all their documents, but it can prove very tricky as you're going through this Real ID process. So with that, I wanted to mention that this is something that MVLS can help with. Sometimes people even actually have to go through a name change process in the courts to officially get all of their documentation changed so that it all matches. So if you are a person who has questions about that or thinks that you may be in that situation, I would definitely encourage you to call MVLS or visit our online intake for help. But in the meantime, between now and October 1st, 2021, I would encourage everyone who's watching this video to check all of the documentation that you'll need to present to the MVA to get your Real ID, and make sure that you are in a good place and don't have any issues with the name, date of birth, anything like that not matching on your documentation. As I mentioned, that's a process that can be difficult to navigate and can take quite a bit to unravel. So you don't want to wait until the deadline to get started. So thank you. And again, please reach out to MVLS, mvlslaw.org, if you need help with your identification documents.